Imagine this: a dark night, and a police officer counting the last seconds of his life. His hands are chained tightly to the cold steel tracks, and just a few feet away, a newborn baby lies helpless, wrapped in a torn blanket. Both of them waiting for the same fate: a speeding train rushing straight toward them. The officer's name was Michael Carter, a man who had always protected others, who had lived his life serving justice. But tonight, there was no one left to protect him. His face was bruised, blood dripping from his temple, one eye nearly swollen shut. The pain of his wounds was heavy, but the weight in his heart was even heavier. Years ago, he had failed a case where an innocent baby was lost. And since that night, the guilt had never left him. And now, here he was again, trapped on the tracks, lying beside another baby, moments away from death. Michael twisted his body, trying to shield the infant with his chest, whispering to himself, "I'll give my life, but I won't let this child go." But then, the train's horn echoed in the distance. The steel beneath him began to shake. Death was getting closer with every heartbeat. Michael clenched his teeth, tasting blood. His breathing grew faster, his body weaker. But deep in his eyes there was still a spark, one last hope. And then, out of the darkness, a sound. A small voice. A shadow. Who was it? A stranger? Or an angel? The trembling of the rails grew stronger. The blinding lights of the train appeared in the distance. And the question hung heavy in the air. Would Michael and the innocent child live to see another moment? Or was this truly the end? The sound of the approaching train grew louder, rattling the metal rails. Michael's wrists were still locked in the cold steel cuffs, every second slipping away like sand in an hourglass. Then, out of nowhere, a small figure appeared at the edge of the tracks. It was Lily, a frightened but determined 9-year-old girl, clutching the leash of her loyal German shepherd, Rex. Michael's heart pounded. "Lily," he shouted desperately. "The cuffs, please, the key. You have to open them now." Her tiny hands trembled as she fumbled with the lock, the train's roar growing deafening. Rex barked furiously, as if urging her to hurry. Michael's breath hitched. He knew they had only seconds. "Lily, listen to me. Steady hands. You can do this." The girl's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. With one last push, the lock clicked open. Michael tore the cuffs away, pulling Lily and Rex off the tracks just as the massive train thundered past, wind whipping their faces. They collapsed onto the gravel, gasping, alive. But Michael's relief didn't last. His eyes scanned the shadows beyond the tracks, and his stomach turned cold. This wasn't over. The men who put him there weren't just criminals. They were part of something darker, something bigger. And in that moment, Michael realized the truth. This was only the beginning. The room was quiet, except for the steady beep, beep, beep of a heart monitor. Michael Carter lay on the hospital bed, his ribs wrapped, his wrists bandaged, his body broken. Every movement hurt, but at least he was alive. Still inside, he didn't feel alive. His mind wouldn't stop replaying the train's headlights, the horn, the baby's desperate cries. And behind those memories, another ghost haunted him. Years ago, he had failed. A baby died in a case gone wrong. That guilt had never left him. And now, lying there, he felt the same weight pressing on his chest. Then, soft footsteps. The door creaked open. It was Lily, the little girl who had pulled him off the tracks. Her hair was tied into 2 uneven pigtails. She wore an oversized gray hoodie that almost swallowed her small frame. In her hands, she carried a folded piece of cloth. Behind her came Rex, the German shepherd. The dog walked straight to the bed and rested his head on the mattress, eyes locked on Michael like a silent guard. Michael's lips curved into a weak smile. "You found me again." His voice was low, rough. Lily walked closer. "The nurse said I only have 5 minutes." She placed the folded cloth into his hand. It was an old handkerchief, thin and worn, with a crooked daisy stitched on one corner. Michael frowned. "What's this?" "It's my lucky scarf," Lily said, her voice small but steady. "You need it more than I do. You almost didn't make it." And with those simple words, the little girl touched a part of Michael's heart that had been filled with nothing but pain for years. Michael stared at her. So young, so fragile, yet braver than most adults he had ever known. He closed his fist around the scarf. "Thank you," he whispered. Rex gave a low rumble, his tail thudding once against the floor. It felt like a promise. None of them were alone anymore. Michael leaned back against the pillow, his eyes heavy. But his voice came out firm, a vow to himself as much as to them. "I won't stop. Not until it's over." Those words filled the room like fire. A warning, a promise, and the beginning of a fight he knew he could not walk away from. Michael didn't waste time after leaving the hospital. His ribs still hurt, but his mind was burning with one goal: find the people who had left him and that baby to die. This time, he wasn't alone. Lily walked beside him, small but determined, and Rex moved silently at her side, alert like a trained soldier. They searched through the city's dark corners. Abandoned houses, broken fences, streets littered with glass. These were the kinds of places where secrets hid. Inside one old house, the air was heavy with dust. The walls were covered in strange marks, almost hidden beneath layers of dirt. To Michael, they looked like random graffiti. But Lily stepped closer, studying them with sharp eyes. "These aren't just drawings," she whispered. "This isn't graffiti. This is a code." Michael looked at her, confused. She explained quietly. "Kids like me sometimes use marks too. Little signs to warn each other. But these are different. These are for them. The bad ones. Drop-off points. Routes. It's like a map." Michael stared at her, realizing she wasn't just helping. She had survival instincts far beyond her age. She could see things he would have missed. They followed the markings deeper into the house. The floorboards groaned with every step. At the back, they entered a small room. In the corner stood a rusted crib, its mattress torn apart. The smell of sour milk and something worse filled the air. On the floor, dark stains spread like shadows. Michael's fists clenched. "They were here," he muttered. His ribs ached, but his anger burned hotter than the pain. Rex sniffed near the crib, then suddenly stiffened. A deep growl rumbled from his throat. His ears shot up, his eyes fixed on the window. Michael swung his flashlight toward it. The street outside looked empty. Silent. Too silent. And then a flicker. A shadow moved. Michael froze, every nerve screaming. Someone had been here. Someone had left these signs. And someone was watching them right now. The cabin was hidden deep in the woods, its wooden walls old and cracked, smoke curling weakly from the chimney. Michael stopped a short distance away, his body still aching, but his mind sharper than ever. Lily stayed close, clutching her small backpack, while Rex walked ahead, silent but tense, as if he already sensed trouble. Before they could even knock, the front door opened. A tall, thin woman stood there. Her hair was faded, tied back loosely, and her eyes looked restless, full of fear. This was Clara Monroe, once a nurse, now just a woman haunted by her past. She stared at them for a moment, then whispered, "Come inside." The air in the cabin was heavy, carrying the smell of smoke and antiseptic. Medical books filled the shelves. Old bottles and syringes were scattered on the table. Clara's hands shook as she held a chipped mug. Michael's voice was firm but calm. "You worked with them, didn't you? With the ones who take children." Clara flinched and looked down. Her voice cracked. "I never hurt them. I fed them. I wrapped them in blankets. I told myself it was better me than someone crueler. But I knew where they were going." She pressed her trembling hand to her mouth. That's how evil survives. People like me, pretending it's not so bad. For a moment, silence filled the room. Then Lily spoke, her voice small but steady. Then stop it now. Clara's eyes softened. She looked at Lily like she was seeing her own lost daughter. Tears filled her eyes as she whispered, "They call him the broker. He runs it all. The houses, the buyers, the guards. He decides everything." Michael leaned closer. "Then give me more. Tell me where." Clara shook her head quickly, her face pale. "You don't understand. They watch me. Always. If I talk, I'm dead. And if I die, they'll know I betrayed them. They'll come for me and for you." Her body shook as she broke down in sobs. And then Rex tensed. His ears shot up, a deep growl rolling out of his chest. He turned to the window, his body stiff, his teeth bare. Michael froze, his hand moving toward his gun. Lily clung to Rex's collar, fear in her eyes. Outside, a branch snapped. Someone was there. They weren't alone. Someone was watching. The ride back from the cabin was quiet. The forest felt too close, branches scraping against the car like long fingers. Michael kept his hands tight on the steering wheel, his chest heavy. The pain in his ribs was bad, but the pain inside him was worse. He couldn't stop the memory that haunted him. Aurora. Years ago. A raid that came too late. By the time they got inside, the crying had stopped. He could still see the little body wrapped in a blanket. Still smell the bleach in the air. Still feel the crushing weight of failure on his shoulders. That ghost never left him, and now, as he looked at Lily and Rex, he feared it was happening all over again. He pulled the car over and finally spoke. His voice was low and rough. "Lily, do you understand how dangerous this is? These people don't care who they kill. If we keep going, they'll come after us. I don't want you caught in this." Lily turned to him. Her brown eyes were steady, sharper than a child's eyes should ever be. "You think I don't know?" she whispered. "I know what it feels like when nobody comes. When people look away. If we leave now, who saves the babies?" Her words hit him harder than any wound. A 9-year-old had just said what he had been too afraid to face. He opened his mouth to argue, but nothing came. Then Rex stepped forward, pressing one paw on the console between them. His eyes locked on Michael's, calm and steady. It was as if the dog was telling him, "We're in this together." Michael let out a long breath. He had carried his ghosts alone for years. But maybe he didn't have to anymore. He looked at Lily, then at Rex, and gave a slow nod. "All right, if we do this, we do it smart. No mistakes." Lily's lips lifted in the smallest smile. Rex's tail gave a single, sharp thump against the seat, like the sound of a clock striking. Michael's voice was steady now, his decision made. "Tomorrow night we move." In that moment, they weren't just a broken cop, a little girl, and a dog anymore. They were a team, but the fight ahead was darker than anything they had faced, and one wrong step could cost them everything. The warehouse stood on the edge of the city, dark and rotten from the outside. To anyone passing by, it looked abandoned. But Michael knew the truth. This was it, the place Clara had warned about, the heart of the trafficking ring. He pushed the door open, moving slow and careful, his gun tight in his hand. His ribs still hurt with every breath, but he didn't care. Lily followed right behind him, holding a small flashlight that shook in her hands. Rex stayed low, his ears high, every step silent, ready to attack if needed. The smell hit them the moment they stepped inside. Damp air, rust, and something so rotten it made Lily cover her nose. Michael raised his flashlight and froze. Rows of cages filled the floor. Dozens of them. And inside babies. Crying, whimpering, too weak to even lift their heads. tiny fingers clutching the iron bars. Lily's eyes widened, her body shaking as she whispered, "They're just babies." Tears slid down her face. Michael felt his chest twist with rage. He had seen crime before, but this was pure evil. They rushed closer. Michael grabbed at one lock, tugging, testing it. "We'll get them out," he muttered through his teeth. "All of them." Rex pressed his nose against the cages, whining, his tail low, as if he understood their pain. "Joe unhone deka, uski bad wapas mudden ka sol hi nahida." And then a sound broke the silence. Heavy boots on the concrete. The scrape of metal dragging across the floor. Slow, mocking claps echoing from the shadows. A man stepped out. Huge, scarred, with cold eyes that never blinked. Behind him, armed men spread across the warehouse, their guns already raised. The man smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Well, look who walked into my den." Michael's grip on his gun tightened. Lily's heart hammered in her chest, but she stood her ground, clutching Rex's fur. The shepherd growled, his teeth flashing in the dim light. Cain had arrived, the broker's enforcer. And he wasn't alone. Guns pointed at them from every side. The trap was shut. Cain's smile faded the moment the first shot rang out. Michael fired, ignoring the stabbing pain in his ribs. Every move hurt like fire, but he kept going. Bullets cracked through the air, babies screamed in their cages, and the warehouse turned into a war zone. Cain's men spread fast. One aimed straight at Lily. Before he could pull the trigger, Rex lunged like lightning, slamming him to the ground. The dog's growl filled the room as his teeth sank deep, fighting with everything he had to protect her. Michael stumbled, grabbed another man, and slammed him against the wall. His ribs screamed with pain, blood filled his mouth, but he didn't stop. Not tonight. Not with children crying for help only a few feet away. In the chaos, Lily dropped to the floor, hands shaking, and pulled a small phone from her backpack. She dialed 911, whispered quickly, "Warehouse babies, help," and shoved the phone under a crate, leaving the line open. Operators would hear everything. The shots, the screams, the proof. A 9-year-old's courage had just flipped the battlefield. Cain roared and swung a heavy metal pipe straight into Michael's side. The hit knocked him to the ground, his vision flashing white. But Michael still raised his gun and fired upward. The bullet grazed Cain's shoulder, forcing him back with a furious snarl. Then the sound cut through the chaos. Sirens, dozens of them, louder and louder, flashing lights bleeding through the cracks in the warehouse walls. Cain's men panicked. Some dropped their guns, some tried to run, but the doors burst open, and police stormed in, shouting, tackling, dragging traffickers to the ground. The cages rattled as officers rushed to the babies. But Cain didn't go down. He locked eyes with Michael, pure hate burning in his stare. And then, while the chaos swallowed everyone else, he slipped through the smoke and vanished into the night. Michael pulled himself up, his body broken but alive. Lily clung to Rex, both shaking but still standing. Around them, the cries of rescued babies filled the warehouse. It looked like the nightmare was ending, but it wasn't. Cain was still out there. And worse, the man pulling all the strings, the broker, hadn't even shown his face yet. The hospital didn't feel the same anymore. Michael lay on the bed, his ribs wrapped, his body aching. But for the first time in years, he didn't feel empty. On the chair beside him, Lily was scribbling flowers on scraps of paper, her legs swinging in the air. Rex was stretched out at Michael's feet, his head resting across the officer's boots like he belonged there. It wasn't just recovery. It felt like the start of something new. Days passed. The traffickers they had caught were dragged into court. Michael sat in the back, watching chains rattle as one guilty verdict followed another. Families cried, judges spoke. Justice was finally happening. But every time he heard those sentences, one truth hit him hard. The broker's name was nowhere. The real mastermind was still missing, still free. Life outside the courtroom was different now. Michael, Lily, and Rex slowly began to feel like a small family. They ate together, argued over little things, laughed at the silliest jokes. Lily would tease him about how much Rex preferred her, and Rex would prove her right by climbing straight into her lap. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't normal, but it was theirs. For them, this wasn't an ending. It was just the beginning, because the true enemy was still out there. One evening, Michael stood on the porch, the sky glowing faintly orange as the sun dropped low. His body was still healing, scars burning under his skin, but his eyes stayed fixed on the yard. Lily was running barefoot across the grass, Rex chasing her in circles, both of them laughing and barking loud enough to shake the air. Michael let out a slow breath, a small smile touching his face. For a moment, it almost felt like peace. Almost, he whispered to himself, steady and certain. We made it, but it's not over. The fight wasn't finished. The broker was still alive, and their little family had a war waiting for them.